I've got the nod and the thumbs up. Hi, I'm Darren Squires from the Hull Food Partnership. The reason why I put this webinar together was from talking with other people. There seem to be two things that we face that we've got to consider with education and food. One of them is if we're running community projects, community food projects, growing projects from the voluntary sector, how do we engage with schools, get them on board and get some kind of effective relationship with them? Because it is important that we work with children. Also, some of us are working within councils and outside councils and with councils attempting to improve school food uh, and healthy eating within school from the statutory sector and what should be statutory obligations as well. So I've got four, I think, well, I know really good presenters that represent both the voluntary sector working with local government and people that work within the statutory sector. Alison, who's down as a speaker, can't speak today, so I'm going to speak for her and give you an outline of what she was going to talk about. But first of all, we're going to start with Alex. Alex is really has got some really successful experience and stories and ways of working with schools around growing and particularly growing food projects. And so I think you're going to get a lot of really useful information on how to get schools on board. So over to you, please, Alex.
I shall try and share my screen. It should work. Oh, looks like it's not going. Oh, there we go. So I've been running a project called Where the Wildings Are for the past 4 years. Up until very recent, it's a Food Futures project in Lancashire. Up until recently, it was being run through an organisation called LESS, a CIC, that has been hosting a lot of Food Futures projects. Just in the past month, well, I've been setting up a charity to take over the work because we have been finding it hard to get funding. That is a reality. So we are now a registered charity as Rewilding Roots, continuing the work of Food Futures, of LESS, delivering Where the Wildings Are. Now, Where the Wildings Are is a project that's all about rewilding your school grounds, growing food, getting the children outside, doing lessons outside, learning more, and building all these things into their daily curriculum. It's a permaculture project. It's involves all parts of the school community, and we start with a baseline study of what the school's already got, what the school already do, and then we build on that. It's a funny kind of situation that we have where there's quite a lot of little projects that have started in the past that have never quite taken off, and there's a lack of sustainability, so that's been an underlying thing to the project. So as well as doing activities, we're giving things like lesson plans and resources to the school so that they can continue doing this work and properly embed it into their daily curriculum as we go. We plan what we grow to fit around when the children are there. So I like cherries that crop early. I like plums that crop late. And I've managed to stop schools trying to grow tomatoes because they're only ever ready in the middle of the school holidays and they're absolutely not used to them whatsoever. Alongside that, we take the plants that they're growing, we try to make sure they're useful for their science lessons. So we do a whole thing about strawberries, so because we're looking at asexual reproduction as well as sexual reproduction, because the schools always do daffodils or tulips. And as much as I love them, they always try to do this at the time of year when there are no daffodils or tulips, but also trying to get them to grow plants that we can then later use, because in reception and year one, quite often you find that they're teaching in their, sorry, I'm old, food tech DT lessons with food, that they're learning to make fruit kebabs, and strawberries are brilliant for fruit kebabs. So I've managed to convince schools to move their fruit kebab lessons to the summer, when the strawberries that have been used by DT earlier in used by year five or year four earlier in the year to grow strawberries. I've convinced them to move things around so that we get a natural flow of events. So the strawberries that are growing on the strawberry plants are actually built into their cookery lessons. And that's the whole timing things to fit around what grows when and how we grow it, and then how we use it. So it's a very much whistle stop tour, this. So at the moment I'm working with 27 schools, because every time a school joins us, then we maintain contact and we include them in future projects, because we also have a potato growing competition that is funded through the local council, and we have an annual conference that is for the children to come and meet other organisations, but also the teachers can come and find out about other projects that are running in the area, because we're very much get schools up and running, get them looking at what they want to do, improving their school grounds, and then we kind of let other organisations step in and take over more, building on what we've started, because we've got a very good relationship with people like the Ernest Cook Trust, the Wildlife Trust, and it all means that it all sort of ties in together. Um, the project, the projects have all been funded by local trusts. At various different points, schools have actually been asked to put their hand in the pocket and put money to match fund what we've done, whether they've done that through fundraising themselves through their PTA, or they've found money from a budget that allows for outdoor activities. Sports funding has been used in some slightly spurious ways in some cases, but creative thinking, I think it's called. We've also run crowdfunding campaigns, and I am a habitual user of Trash Nothing, and I've had so many really lovely members of the public clear out their garden sheds and give me whatever they've got in form of pots, plants, tools, all kinds of things that have been really helpful to help the schools get set up and running. One thing that I have been very aware of, because I've got a background of being a teacher, is that there is a very different ecosystem in every school that I go into. So part of the baseline studies is to work out where they're at and then how they want to move forward. So it's a collaborative thing. Although there is a basic structure to the project, there's a certain amount of flex in how we apply it, how we implement sessions and that kind of thing. And all of the sessions that I do are very much child-led or inquiry-led pedagogy. So we've because I'm forest skills trained and permaculture with children trained, then it's very much following where the children's train of thought and what they would like to grow and how they would like to design things. So that's your little whistle-stop tour through where the Wildings are. I don't know if anyone's got any questions, and then I can elaborate.
Oh, shall we put questions at the end?
Yeah, sure.
And really useful idea as well. If like me, you forget your questions. If you haven't got a pen and paper, if you stick them in the chat, we can put them in there as well. That was brilliant. I've got some questions or things that I want to make sure that everybody got on board with there, because that was fantastic. Right now, then, up next, it should be Alison. Alison's not very well today, but what she did do was I've met with everyone beforehand because I wanted to find out what useful information people have got, which is why I think I've got a good team of presenters. So I've gotten some idea of what Alison been doing in the statutory sector, and she sent me some extra notes as well, very helpfully this morning, even though she was in pain. Uh, but she works for Lincolnshire Council, and she works in education, but they are actually funded by Health, which is quite interesting that Health are getting involved around food when it comes to education. Uh, so she also works in not just schools, but around wraparound childcare and early years and things like holiday activities funds. And that's quite useful because she gets a good overview of schools. They're also doing things where they're giving the kind of support schools already want, which is really important. So they've got a kind of already got a positive relationship with a lot of schools, but they also have to look at improving school food standards and try to monitor school food standards. And that's not an easy job because that's the bit where you are potentially going and telling schools that they're not up to scratch. But they've got lots of positive relationships with schools. All their school relationships are voluntary and they're commercial as well. So schools are actually buying in their support services. Uh, uh, and they have an in-house accreditation as well. So unlike, I think it's the healthy school, there are a few healthy school schemes. They've got their own in-house one, and it means that it's free. So they don't have to buy in like uh, Food for Life served here, for example. This is the things that she wanted us to take away from this. Uh, when the support's free, they get good engagement. When the schools are having to pay, it's not so good. They have no statutory levers to enforce or even monitor compliance. And it's something we need to remember when in the voluntary sector that a lot of council officers don't have the power they used to have. And the work they do is rely on schools having the time, having no other conflicting priorities, having the funding if they need it, and a wish to have this engagement. They don't have the wish to engage, it's not going to happen. Uh, they have a whole school settings approach, which makes it much more successful. So the fact that they've got carrots as well as the very lacking sticks that we have these days. Uh, they she also says that school food standards need reviewing because there are still things now in the current setting where sugar is not necessarily restricted. And she also thinks there needs to be more focus on talking to schools about how food affects attendance, attainment, and behaviour. And I think I agree with her totally on this. We would like Ofsted to get involved because they're the only people with any kind of a stick with schools. Something she did mention for some reason didn't get transcribed when I copied it across. If you've got a very supportive school with a supportive school head, and everything's going brilliantly, and that head changes, that relationship can change as quickly as in a day. You can be doing work in there that is going on amazingly. I've just left a school after 12 years of amazing work, a new head, and 2 weeks later, I was leaving that school. So that was Alison's information. If you've got any questions, I did have a meeting with her, so I may be able to answer some of those, but I may not. We're going to go to the voluntary sector now. And we're going to get Catherine to talk about the work she's been doing in Guernsey. It's not just the voluntary sector, though. She's been working with and for the Guernsey government to help them implement some of their healthy eating and school food policies as well. So this is sitting within the voluntary sector, but working closely with and for the statutory sector. So over to you, Kat.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm just going to start by trying to share my screen. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that. So yeah, my name's Kat Tyrrell and I'm based in Guernsey in the Channel Islands. And I work for a charity called the Health Improvement Commission. We are essentially commissioned by government to help them deliver on the ground actions to help deliver the government's healthier weight strategy. So we've got various pillars of work within the charity, but I sit within the Eat Well pillar of work, so focusing on healthy eating, and I focus on primary schools and then also youth settings across Guernsey and Alderney, so 2 islands in the bailiwick. So essentially, the government in Guernsey does have a Food in Guernsey Schools Policy Directive, which all schools are supposed to be following, but with over 100 different policies that schools would need to be aware of, often we find that they either aren't aware of the Food in Guernsey School policy, or they don't have capacity to make sure that they're abiding by it. And this is exacerbated by the fact that we often, we don't really have anybody accountable in government to carry out the monitoring of this policy to make sure that schools are actually following it. So while it exists, it's one of those classic, okay, we've done it and now it's sort of on the shelf and people are supposed to know about it and do it, but we're not necessarily going to check that they are doing it. So aside from my work, there's not really much going on to enforce any of that. So basically, as a charity, then I get in contact with the schools and I offer them free support to help them tick off the components of the Food in Guernsey Schools policy. And similar to what has already been said, we find that engagement with schools is highly dependent on who is in a school at a particular time. So that might be the head teacher, or it might just be a different teacher in a school that has a particular interest in eating well and healthy eating. And so they might pick up the support that I'm offering. But if they leave, or if something in the school changes, so they might have a change of head, again, as an example, then quickly we can find that engagement falls away. So this is a hurdle that we struggle with quite a lot. But when these things do align, we can accomplish some great things. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time today just talking about an example where we have worked successfully with a school, engaging with every facet of the school, from the pupils to the staff to parents, to help bring in a localized policy within that school that has really helped to support children's nutrition. So the school in question is Hoke Pells Primary School. So it's one of our larger schools on Guernsey, although none of them are really quite as large as you'd get elsewhere. So it's probably got about 400 pupils. And we got invited to come and talk to the school because one of the teachers in that school had taken on a role as an Eat Well lead, which was amazing that the school had decided to actually appoint somebody to carry out this work rather. And it's an unpaid position. It's just something that this teacher has an interest in and wants to do to, I guess, further their to upskill themselves and just to take on another role within the school, and because they have an interest in it. So we very much hope that this continues. But as I say, if they were to leave, then I'm not sure where we would be with this school. But what we have done in recent years then is we went to go and talk to them, and they really wanted to bring something in that would support all of their pupils to eat well within the school premises. So we recommended that it would be really important to bring everybody along on this journey. So to start with, we recommended that they put together a pupil voice. So they put together a group called the Food Team, which is made up of about 30 different pupils that volunteered to be part of the food team. And they named themselves, so it's called Focus on Our Diet is what it stands for, which is quite cute. And they meet probably every couple of weeks just as part of their lunch break, and they discuss food within the school and ways that they can support their other pupils to be able to eat well. So we first established that team and engaged with them to figure out what they thought about food in school. And then we similarly held an engagement session with the staff to figure out what they felt could be done within the school, because of course the teachers are the ones who are going to need to be monitoring any changes that they're making to make sure that it's actually having the desired effect. So we spoke with them, and then we also ran a parent survey to find out their thoughts on food and nutrition within the school. So I attended 2 parents' evenings to help collect this data to support parents to complete the survey. And then we also utilised the school's Dojo app, where they communicate with parents about their children, so that they could plug the survey. And I think we managed to get roughly about half of parents responded to it, which was quite good, really, considering that yeah, we didn't really need no one needed to do the survey, but we did also incentivize it by offering some vouchers for a local store as a way of increasing engagement with parents. So after we did that, we collated all the results and we put together some of the key statistics that we felt that we could feed back to parents so that they could see what everyone else was saying. So they could see that, oh, actually, more or less all of us, 96%, believe that it's important for children to eat healthily during the school day. So we probably put together about 6 of these graphics that could be put out on Dojo over a series of a couple of weeks, so that they could actually see the results of their survey and then hopefully understand why we were bringing in what we were about to bring in. So what we decided to do was bring in a fruit and veg break time snack policy, because previously children would take something from their lunchbox, and that could have been anything. So it could be a packet of crisps or a chocolate bar or anything that you might imagine to find in a lunchbox. But we felt that if we could have a policy within the school where break time should be a time where everybody eats an item of fruit or veg, so that everybody is uniform in that and they can all enjoy something healthy with their peers and really normalize it within a school setting, then that would be really beneficial to children and their health. So this is what we brought in. And again, we tried to communicate this to parents. So the food teams, so the pupil-led group, they put together small videos that they put out on Dojo to say to explain to parents what they're about to do and why it was important for the pupils of the school. And I felt that that was really powerful, that it was coming from the pupils and not just from the school or even from me saying your children need to be healthier and here's what we're doing about it. This was the pupils saying, this is what we would like because we would like to be healthy. And so this is what you can expect to see in the coming weeks. So we worked with the school to bring this in, and they brought it in after the Christmas holidays in 2024. Last year, so in January 2024 it came in, and again we brought parents along the journey, and we've created more infographics to share with them to show the impact that this fruit and veg break time policy was going to have on their children. So these are just some of the examples of what we put out so that they could really visually see, oh, okay, I understand why we are doing this now. And so they've been doing this now for over a year, and it's been a huge success. And a lot of parents have commented that it actually makes things easier for them, because often we get reports of parents being frustrated because their child's getting picked on because they have an apple in their lunchbox, whereas someone else is eating a chocolate bar. But it takes that away because everybody's there eating the same thing together. And for those families that had concerns about being able to provide fruit or veg, so for example, if they had issues with fussiness or if they had issues with the cost of fruit and veg, then the school actually had a provision through another charity of 100 pieces of free fruit that is delivered every single week. So I attended some drop-in sessions with the school during pickup time, so that I was available if any parents had concerns that they wanted to raise with me. And that was an opportunity then for me to remind them that this was a provision that the school had. So I was there as a face so that anyone could approach me and I could try and allay their concerns. So hopefully that gives an idea of what we've done from start to finish to bring mostly parents along the journey from start to finish, but also really involving the pupils and also involving the staff that need to actually be involved in the project. If anybody is interested, we captured all of this on video, and so it has interviews with parents and the teachers to find out what they think about it all. And it's just really sweet watching the children paint like hedge veg stalls. This is not a thing that you have in the UK, but in Guernsey we have hedge veg. It's all explained in the video, so if you want to go and view it, then this is a QR code that will take you straight to it. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me at the end. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kat. That is it's one of the best proper whole school projects where we're talking about not just the whole school, but the entire community, because it's got the parents and the children as well as staff on board. That's fantastic. So we're going to shuffle back into the statutory sector again, because we're going to get Rab Brown to talk about working with one of the local authorities that has probably the strongest commitment to provision of high quality, universally accessible school meals. And he's going to be talking about the challenges and successes of working with the schools when you've actually got, in this case, the council have been throwing around quite a lot of money, haven't they? So let's hear from Rab.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me? Just checking. Yeah, all great. Amazing. So yeah, apologies for not having any slides. It's going to just have to be my face in the middle of the screen for the next 10 minutes. So my name is Rab Brownell. I am the Fantastic Food in Schools Programme Manager at Tower Hamlets Council. And yeah, if anyone wants to contact me, I'll put my name and email in the chat after this. So yeah, Tower Hamlets, if you know about it or don't, it's right in the middle of London. We have the real kind of extremes of London all in one borough, kind of Canary Wharf on one end, you've got kind of London Bridge, it's all sandwiched in between the Square Mile and kind of very hipster Shoreditch, and in the middle of it, some of the highest levels of deprivation, I think the most densely populated part of the UK, kind of all in one borough. We are really fortunate to have had universal free school meals in primary schools since 2013. And then in secondary schools since I think September 2022. So we're in the second year of that now. I think the only local authority in the UK to provide universal free school meals up to the age of 16. My role is as a program manager working mainly on primary school food. So it actually was called the School Food Improvement Program. I think this kind of speaks a little bit to that we really have less stick and more carrot, and we really need to kind of reframe a program which we felt did not have a kind of good perception among schools. And so that was part of the name of calling it Fantastic Food in Schools. The program is made up of 3 parts. So we have our own council caterer that caters a lot of our schools. So it's kind of doing improvements to that. We have a really amazing, engaged, healthy lives team who do a lot of work, very practical work within schools on all sorts of things around kind of health, and for them to do a lot of the kind of really hands-on work around whole school food environments in all these individual schools, and then kind of wrapping around all of that with what we called the conditions of grant. So when we introduced the program, we paid for universal free school meals. This was saying schools had to kind of report their figures. We wanted to ensure that all kitchen staff were paid the London living wage, which isn't the case in all schools, sadly. And perhaps most controversially were kind of extended school food standards, which meant a dessert policy, or I'm trying to kind of reduce / get rid of desserts in a borough with some of the highest levels of childhood obesity. And yeah, this was kind of controversial within the council and among schools. The challenges that we have really had, I mean, engagement is the big challenge we've had, both within the council, I think, and with schools. We know what schools have the worst uptake. We know which ones have the highest level of free school meal eligibility, and the ones that aren't serving food at the level that we know it is. But it is really hard to influence those schools necessarily. And we've tried a lot of ways. So I'm going to kind of explore some of the successes and some of the ways where we failed today. I think it's been a real challenge. I sit in public health, and there's just a lot of competing concerns. You kind of sit in meetings. There's maybe not this conjoined approach to how we talk to schools, and you have multiple people across multiple meetings in public health sending out multiple surveys, sex education, physical education, air quality, asthma, everything is kind of on the agenda, and you're really bombarding schools. And so to get food on the agenda will actually, is a challenge. And that's actually sometimes a bit more of an exciting thing than, for example, sometimes, people that are really struggling to engage around asthma. So I really think it's important that I sometimes remember it's not just me struggling with school engagement. And I think there's a big bit of work to do around a kind of conjoined effort. And then kind of overshadowing all of this, in London, a really amazing thing that happened was, the universal free school meal funding from the Mayor of London. And that actually removed our leverage. So we were no longer paying for universal free school meals in primary schools. And we really we really didn't have any money to kind of leverage to say we need schools to do this, this, and this around school food. What hasn't worked is, I think, telling schools what to do. We sent out a kind of charter and a letter signed by the deputy head and the director of children's, I can't remember all the directorate names, at the beginning of the program about 2 years ago. And putting it kindly is to say it was ineffective. And in reality, it went down really badly with a lot of head teachers in the school. Lots of councils asking, what right do we have to do to tell us what's on the menu? And yeah, I think, so I just lost my notes. I think a lot of schools, for all the kind of email wrangling and all the meetings within the schools, a lot of schools see the council as homogenous. And so, talking to some of the less engaged schools we managed to talk to, a letter coming from a specific department didn't actually have as much impact as we thought it would. So that was a real lesson to learn. What has really worked is relationship kind of based change in schools. And we have a lot of teams that have been around for a really long time in Tower Hamlets, the Healthy Lives team, the kind of governors team, the parent engagement teams. They have really good relationships with people in schools. They understand and really kind of knowing which heads and which school leaders are influential. We had a working group that we formed around school food, and we kind of got the right heads and governors and business managers. And actually a lot of the kind of little changes we've had in schools and the work we've managed to do in schools has been done through kind of a call to a head who's spoken to another head and said, maybe you can kind of go from having cake on your menu 5 days a week down to kind of 1 day a week. And so it's very relationship based. Work is very slow. A lot of this work is in schools, especially, whether we're kind of doing very tangible work like introducing family style dining, things like that, or writing a new school food policy. It's really about culture change. And, I keep going back to desserts, but a lot of that is cultural change, and it takes whole communities and lots of people in schools saying, we've done this for years, why do we need to change? And this work is slow. And I think, we've started work with some schools, and then someone in the school resigns, there's an Ofsted inspection, they find out they have rack concrete, and we put the work on ice for 2 terms, and sometimes it takes a while to pick it up. And I think the challenge is sometimes this really doesn't match with a lot of the KPIs and timelines that council projects have. And so we've just had to be really flexible about that. And when we're kind of reflecting back to some of the more senior management who are looking at the programs, it's really important to be able to kind of communicate that. And then also another area that has worked quite well is finding people in schools who are quite keen to do more. Heads are often, like I said earlier, have so much on their plate. And we have had some success finding a lot of people who are kind of either deputies or heads of years. They have they're kind of quite ambitious. They want to run projects in school. Food is a really exciting thing to do that around. It's part of their personal development plans, and that's been kind of, yeah, giving it to someone outside of a head and being able to find access to those people has been where we've got a lot of success. I just wanted to end because I also, as a kind of case study at the end, was thinking about universal free school meals in secondary schools, and on the face of it, you think it would kind of be that's a brilliant thing. What schools would kind of be possibly against it? And when we introduced it and announced it, we had about 6 months, I think, before the policy was going to be put in place. A lot of heads kind of came back at us saying, like, you know, we've very understandably, like, we've don't have the investment in tables, we don't have the staff, we've kind of set the lunch times for next year. This is all kind of coming at very short notice. There's a lot of concerns around pupil premium funding. So one of the really impactful things that we did was to be part of the Fix Our Food auto enrollment. And if anyone from local authorities hasn't looked at that, I'd really urge you to. We did it's effectively moving from an so I've got to say this right, an opt-in system of free school meal eligibility to an opt-out system of free school meal eligibility led by the council. And we identified about 850 new pupils in the borough, which was a huge amount of money saved for the council, and over £1 million in pupil premium funding. And I think going to a school that had identified 50 new pupils that were free school meal eligible and had got all of that additional pupil premium funding was, yeah, that really kind of changes the conversation when you're going into secondary schools. And I think finally, on that matter, we've had one of the really big successes of this policy has been uptake has improved, and free school meal eligible uptake has improved, but compliance with the school food standards has gone up by about 30%, which is huge in the borough. That's at the kind of break time and at lunch. And that's by actually, we've done these big evaluation projects, and without kind of making them public, we've just made a lot of schools aware if they're a bit further down the list than they should be. And that's actually led to a lot of schools doing work and making sure that their menus are compliant. And yeah, that was the end of my talk. I hope there was something useful in there, and I'm going to put my email in the chat if anyone wants to talk. Thank you.
Brilliant, that was fantastic. Hope someone's coming to I'm going to admit somebody before we open to questions. I just wanted to say as well, universal free school, the opt-in system, sorry, the opt-out system of free school meals. If anybody is in a region where they're thinking about it, please do it, because you will get the eternal gratitude, hopefully, of the schools as well. Because how much money would that have brought to the schools in pupil premium, which is extra money the schools get? Something like, I'm trying to work out whether it's 850,000. I think it's 8.5 million in extra school funding that Tower Hamlets will have brought in by using that system. We're looking in Hull about £1 million a year is going to come into our schools starting in September, because we've just got the go ahead to implement free school meal opt-outs as well. So questions and comments as well, because this is a webinar, which is a tech way of saying seminar, isn't it? So does anybody have any questions? I've got one to get the ball rolling, which is to the people that are working in schools in the education side of it. How important is it to have that kind of teacher or staff understanding of how schools work when you're trying to make offers into schools? And I'm thinking particularly Alex, because Alex, like me, is also a teacher.
I think the fact that I had previously worked in the first set of schools, that they knew me, they knew my background as a countryside ranger as well. So I had it gave a bit of weight to what I was saying, and it meant that they knew that I understood the pressures they were under, and the fact that I was offering to be an extra pair of hands, essentially. So although I do need someone in the school to be working with me as well as this, so I always say that there has to be two people. The head has to have the final say, but there has to be a school lead, a member of staff. It doesn't even matter if it's a cleaner, but there needs to be someone who can sort dates out and make sure that things happen when they're meant to, and deal with the random emails saying I've got a delivery coming to you.
Yeah.
But the fact that that then built the momentum for the other schools that followed, because I then started to get a reputation where people knew that what myself and Olivia, who works for me, do is we go in and we help and we deliver sessions and we deliver resources, and we try to not add to the workload as well.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think having an understanding of how schools work is really important, because you can fit in there much more smoothly, and they can value
Yeah,
your input because
definitely.
you know how to meet their needs as well. We've got one here, and I'm not sure there's anybody here that's got direct experience of this, except for Alison, who's not with us. But does anybody have any experience of attempting to monitor school food standards?
We tried to. We weren't part of the national pilot in Tower Hamlets, and we did try a pilot with our own environmental health teams, which I can't say was particularly successful. It's very hard to. The kind of information that we were getting didn't really give us a picture. I mean, most of the schools in our borough are they're with our own council caterer, so I don't know. I guess that's a context of Tower Hamlets. So we know that they're compliant with the school food standards, generally speaking, and we're trying to find a little bit more information about, what was on offer. I guess more stuff about the whole school environment, and it's very hard to train. It's very hard to get environmental health officers who to kind of be able to judge that. And so, we're still working on that piece of work. I know that Southwark and Newham have done similar stuff, and I think found it similarly difficult.
Yeah, for anybody that's not sure about this, the DFE, the Department for Education and Food Standards Agency, did a pilot project where environmental health officers were trained to have an additional check sheet which they used to see whether schools were meeting school food standards. That pilot finished. I spoke to DFE and FSA, and as far as I can tell, it sits with the DFE, and only if and when they decide to carry it forward will it get carried forward. And I looked to try and do similar things in our schools, but one of the issues I found was the council, Environment Health, immediately said, well, we need more money. And then the council said, and we don't know how much money it's going to cost. I showed them a very simple formula. I'm not much of a maths teacher, but I worked out on the back of an envelope how you can work how much it costs. It's 20 minutes of environmental officer's time per school. So you just work it. You should be able to work it out from there. But so if anybody is interested in monitoring and they do want a system, do search that up. And if you're not sure, email me, because I've got all the documents sitting in a folder somewhere, and I'll forward them to you. And I know from talking to Alison, they struggle. They can't find a way of effectively monitoring school food standards, because the only schools that are going to let you monitor them are the ones that are already meeting the standards. And anybody that doesn't want you to go in can just say, don't go in. Sue has said Ofsted had a role. So my head in one of the schools I do work in is massively knowledgeable at Ofsted. I think may even be an inspector. And he said that he's had no training or indication that they have a role in food, even though they do. And I did a podcast about school food, or in my food podcast, I interviewed a school food chef who was also an ex-catering manager, and he said in his 30 years of experience, only once does he remember or does he recall Ofsted ever getting involved with food. So that is one that we all need to work out, of convincing the government to give us some levers. Do we have any more questions that are not in the
I did have my hand up higher. I'm Charlotte. I work for Food for Life. I look after our Schools Award programme throughout the UK. And on the subject of school food standards, really, you know, we not only the monitoring of them, but we find that there's an amazing number of schools that don't even really know about them, let alone whether they're meeting them or not, and aren't quite sure what they are and understand them. And so part of our work is trying to really kind of bring home those governor responsibilities as well, and to support the governors with what, you know, with what is essentially on their list. So I just wondered anybody else's experience around engaging governors in this work as well.
I could probably say something about that, but of course it's not quite the same because I'm based in Guernsey. So we are quite fortunate that we're a small island, so we have quite good communications with our government. So we try and get in like quarterly meetings with the education officers that would be responsible for the policy document. And we will do reviews with them, and we will talk about ways that we can try and have more engagement with schools so that we can improve the components of the policy in each individual school. But I know that Jersey, who's our sister island, even though, I mean, they're a slightly bigger island, but they are still a small island in comparison to the UK. They don't have that communication with their education officers. And so the work there is much, much slower. So I think, yeah, having those contacts is really key, but I don't necessarily have any advice for how you can improve those communications with the education officers that would be relevant for you. But it's certainly very, very important in my experience.
And do you have school governors, Kat, in Guernsey then?
If we do, they probably have a different name, so I'm not entirely sure what they would be. Yeah. Sorry.
That's right. Thank you.
Thanks. In the pilot, from what I remember, they also found in the pilot, because they obviously talked to the schools as well, a lot of the schools were unaware of their legal obligations. For anybody that doesn't know this, there are school food standards. I spoke to a council officer who had that responsibility around that the other day, that told me there were no school food standards, that had to Google it before he admitted it. But schools are the ones that have the legal responsibility. So the schools and the school governors, they're the ones within which the legal responsibility sits. But they're not always, a lot of them are managed by trusts, and the trusts, you know, they manage them at least as heavily as the LEA did. So you can understand why maybe they're not responsible for their own catering quite often, because it's done at a MAT level. And a lot of other things are managed by the multi-academy trust. So it's hardly surprising that the school will not be aware of the fact that they are responsible for catering. I was in a school the other day, and they were talking about something that they have to do because it was part of the national curriculum. But they're a multi-academy trust. They don't have to follow the national curriculum. But because the curriculum is managed by someone in London or wherever, they're not even aware of the curriculum requirements, let alone the food requirements. Sorry, I'm sorry I missed your hand up as well. I should put my glasses on. It's
That's
my fault.
Thank you.
Do we have any more hands up, or any comments, or any as well as questions? Doncaster, you are sorry, Rotherham, you're one of the people that are the model for us in Hull, going for the free school meals, by the way, the auto enrollment. So thank you so much. You were a role model for us. So any more questions? Any more comments?
I mention something that we're trying, and I've asked a colleague of mine. I'm going to get her to do a really boring job, which is go on all the school websites and get the menus and see if there's a healthy food policy. And I know it's really boring, but I think I've got to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're not in the lovely position that Tower Hamlets are in. 60% of our if it was our local authority catering, I'd have some hope, but actually 40% of our schools do not follow the local authority catering route. But the challenge with our lovely local authority catering is the amount of money that they're given per meal. So if there's any sort of influence that we can have wider, it's around, because obviously everyone's had the cost of living crisis, including our caterers, so there is that. I think it's 258 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I think somebody from the that was on early will know exactly, but it's not a lot for a healthy meal.
No.
So I think there is something around managing that as well, which if we can influence any of that agenda, that would be helpful.
Interesting fact that I didn't realise until recently, but in Hull we actually subsidise school meals by 50p a pop. So it is possible for the council to put.
We do 600,000 a year.
Right. Oh, there you go.
That's what we do.
Subsidies.
Of subsidies
Right,
for our free school meals, but obviously that's only 60%. So that's a hell of a lot of money, and it's whether that continues. So obviously it's being subsidised at the moment.
Yes, and so other people who are working with councils who aren't subsidising school meals, it is possible to be done, and it's been done in Hull for about 20 years. Oh, experiencing post-16 settings. I did a film where I worked with some young people, and they said that one of the comments they made was that the fruit pots cost more than a cooked breakfast. Was the comment that they made. They were quite happy with the fact that they got an hour for lunch and not 30 minutes, but they were unhappy about the fact that unhealthy food doesn't meet school food standards. And I'm not sure actually whether post-16 education, because it's not a school setting, whether I don't think I've read anything about it having to follow school food standards. And to be honest, looking at the food that they're serving, I'm not sure that they do as well.
I've got a meeting in a college tomorrow. I shall ask the question.
Do have a chat to them, because it is quite interesting in terms of. So we are 5 minutes away. If nobody has any more comments, then please do shout up or put your hand up.
Lucy's got a hand up, Darren. So I think I'm just saying that because we said you can't see.
I can't. I don't know where I put I found my glasses. There we go, Lucy. Sorry, Lucy. There we go.
Hi.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, I wanted to talk about sugar tax and the fact that money doesn't go to schools anymore, and wondered how everybody felt about potentially doing a campaign where each school writes to their local MP and asks them to approach the Treasury about having that money put back where it's supposed to go, because even in 21-22, £334 million came in through that sugar levy, Soft Drinks Association. And that money, if it was split between, 20,000 schools, that's quite a lot of money to help support some of this work that you've all been talking about. So I'm just raising that as a thing.
Although Sustainable Food Places are managing this, we've got somebody sitting here. I think it's something that maybe the SFP could help us lead on, because they have access to government at a higher level. And I think maybe we could all then do some grassroots and groundwork. Sustainable Food Places could do the talking to government about it. And I think you're right. And we do have the ear of politicians through them. And I think it's something we should certainly do. Brilliant. And we've got a yes. Yes, we've got a yes from the SFP. They are thinking about it. Thank you, Sharma.
Darren, I just wanted to mention something positive that came from when I met our person that's head of catering. And she said that young people are getting much more experimental with what they want to eat. And I just think that's really positive, because people make the assumption that they just want pizzas and whatever. And so from her take, young people are much more willing to try things, and I think that's a real positive. So I just want to
Oh, that's
sort of
fantastic,
reflect,
yeah.
because people say, oh well, they'll only want a burger and a pizza,
Yeah.
and that's all they'll eat, but that's
Yeah.
actually what she said is from her observation, so that's great.
Fantastic. In that case, before we go, I'm just going to run through all what I think are key things that the amazing presenters said today that I made notes of in our meetings, and they are: work with the relevant parts of the curriculum. Science, Alex mentioned science, not maths and English. Teachers don't need help with maths and English. They do need help with science. Make sure that if you are doing grain projects, that the crops suit the school year, early crops and late crops. Expect primary schools to be more amenable to a lot of this stuff. I think Alex also mentioned that if you work in secondary, it tends to be in after-school clubs. Am I right? We don't expect the councils to have the statutory levers that we would like them to have. Here in Hull, there are 3 council schools, all the rest are MATs, and MATs can kind of do what they want. So we don't have a mechanism for monitoring, and we might have lots of sorry, my screen just went down there again. They might not have lots of levers, but they do have some carrots that they can have as well, so they can support schools. And the capacity of the school and the staff wanting to be involved makes a massive difference. So if you don't have staff that want to be involved, you might not get them to be involved. One that I don't remember Kat saying, which I thought was brilliant, was that they changed from eat healthily to eat well. So some of the language that we can use, some of the ways that we can work as we sit outside of the statutory way of thinking about things can be really important. And engaging parents with the survey was an amazing thing. I really hoped that the fact, for example, we're subsidising school meals would make a difference in Hull. It doesn't make a difference in Tower Hamlets, and they are covering all of the costs of secondary schools. So even though they've got grant conditions that they could hold schools to, it just goes to show how little power there is. But also, we've got some really positive things that people have been speaking about as well. And somebody said, I can corroborate the statement, is that often, or more often, it's the parents that claim the children won't eat the food. And that is true, yes. So all of the presenters here and Alison have said that if you want more information from them, please do get in touch with them. And the same with me as well, all the stuff that I spoke about that I've got stashed away on my hard drive in my folders. I'm more than happy to share it as well. So I'll just hand over to Sharma to say goodbye, but thank you so much for taking part, everybody.